All right, we are live, and I'm going to wait a few seconds while YouTube and StreamYard yap at each other and get connected. So we'll see how that works out. All right, there we go. There we go. We're all connected up. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I am your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Um, do all the things that YouTubers do. Remember to consensually smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and all that stuff. Tonight I'm doing what I normally do on a Saturday, which is live react to various things. And tonight on tap we have, there's a video that was put out by Paulogia Live featuring Shannon Q. They were doing a live broadcast, and they were talking to this nurse in a cancer ward. And this is kind of one of those issues that's close to my heart, I guess, as an atheist, because of, the aspect of healthcare plus spirituality. Like, people are always being asked to pray for people and stuff. So there's that. Yeah. So we'll get to all that, and I do want to talk about that. It's more of a serious issue for me, and maybe for what we normally do on a Saturday night. We're still going to have some fun and do some stuff, and I'm sure the chat will have shenanigans as always. So we'll have a good time with that. So, well, let's get kind of a roll call of who's here. Let's see, Triple E was here early. Fred, who I saw on several of the streams. Get around, Fred. Good grief. Depocalypse. See, I killed Earl here, so Mom's in the house. Some of you got to be on a little bit better behavior. I know you won't listen to that, but there we go. Martin's here. Anne-Marie, good to see you. Paul's here. Good to see you, Paul. I haven't seen you in a bit. Been a minute. Frank Elder God is here. Hey, Shannon Q's here. Good to see you. I'm going to be talking about your video. I want to kind of add my thoughts as a former minister. So I felt this was there's always an attendance. Yeah, I mean, you could be like Ferris Bueller and not say anything, but it's all right. Hey, Kevin, good to see you, Evan. Oh, man. And thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate you. Oh, man. Already the hat pull is in the thing, and I reached the super chat goal. It's a very fun way of me asking for money. So as I get going. So thank you very much. So, but yeah, that's what we're going to be doing tonight. While everybody gets in, we also have some Fangs stuff too. So my made up deity. So we'll see what happens there. There's a few things that happen. Hey, Wolf's here. All right, good. So, let's. I'm going to pull this up because I want to talk about this video because.
What would you like to talk about today?
So I'll make sure the sound is running. All right, and this is a conversation with Christina and Paulogia and Shannon Q. So I want to. There's a lot of issues presented here in this that, as a former minister, I still struggle with, I guess. I'm not going to say anything that Shannon and Paul say is bad, but there was a lot of talk when I first came out of the ministry of me being a secular chaplain, and this was one of my issues of why I did not become a secular chaplain. Like, it was more of a it became a deconversion from being a pastor issue for me. Like, I didn't want to go down this route, but every once in a while, because I used to be a minister and I still live in the community that I used to be a minister in, people will ask me, hey, can you come to the hospital and pray for my friend or whatever? And it gets to be a really awkward conversation. So I'm going to actually earphone up so I don't get feedback. Uh, I won't do that, Shannon. Actually, what you and Paul did was pretty good. I'm I'm just adding my own commentary to it. So, hey, Wolf. All right, well, here we go. Uh, let's roll it and we'll see what happens.
Hello, Christina. You are on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi there. I
Hi.
mostly just wanted to talk about an ethical dilemma that I face pretty much every day at work. I'm a nurse on a cancer unit, and I'm the only atheist nurse on my unit. And I've had a lot of patients, in their dying moments, ask me if I can pray for them. And I say, first they ask, do you believe in God? And I say, well, no, I don't. And they say, but I say, but I'll pray for you anyway. Like, I will be here for you. I will pray for you. And their response is usually like, no thanks. And I'm like, okay, well, I can find somebody who is religious who can pray with you. But since that moment, I've kind of adopted the mentality of, you know what, maybe I'll just pretend I'm a theist and pray with them, and it'll have just as much benefit than somebody who's religious who's praying for them, because it's not real, right? Like,
Yeah, this is the big issue that I do have with going into hospitals and praying for. I kind of guess I have to tell a little bit of my own story about my history of praying for people in hospitals as a minister. Um, if you want something that will very emotionally impact you, hold somebody's hand while they're dying. I've done that, like, I've probably lost count. A lot of the people in my churches were older, and I felt like I was always doing more funerals than I ever did anything other than that. But it was just, there's something like, I had one lady that 3 months before she was in my church, she was very lively, but she kind of announced to the congregation that she had like several digestive cancers. And she was about to go into, the cancer ward herself. And I thought to myself, looking at her, that, she looked healthy, everything looked fine. And then 3 months later, I'm being called into the hospital because I hadn't seen her. Like, she was in treatment and stuff. And I didn't recognize her. Like, she was so thin, there was nothing left. She was in so much pain that she couldn't even put together a coherent sentence. And I was literally there holding her hand when she passed away. And so it's one of those things, like, when people ask me to pray for them, there's a whole bunch of conjuring up of that I don't know. There's more of that emotional aspect. This is one of the emotional things that probably kept me in the faith, is I wanted something like, when you watch somebody die, there's, I don't care how devoted a Christian they are, if you stay there long enough, you can see the fear in their eyes. They're very much there is a caged animal aspect to a lot of it. And this was the case in this particular woman's case. She could recognize me, but she couldn't. She was in so much pain, she couldn't even vocalize anything. And she was very much like a trapped animal. And I'm holding her hand, which is pretty much skin and bone at this point. Whereas 3 months before, she had been very vibrant. And it was just it's an emotional moment. And so I get what this nurse is saying as far as pray for you, because now I look back at that moment and it's like I was there, and probably the most significant thing that I did for her was I was there and I was holding her hand and I was with her. Like, she was not alone. And so there's that aspect of it. So when I heard this nurse talking, I very much resonated with her now, because I've been there, I've done that, I've seen what these people do. And when you're inside like a hospital cancer ward situation, and you're holding somebody's hand and they're dying, or they're going through something really hard and they're trying to figure it out. Trying to be honest as an atheist now, like I've had a couple people come up to me and say, would you pray for me? And I'm like, because they used to know me as a pastor, and it creates a very awkward situation for me, because I'm like, I want to be really honest about it. And like, I don't think prayer does anything. But I can definitely spend a moment and talk to you and be empathetic to you and deal with you on that level. It's really hard when people are facing death so in front of their face. And when you're an atheist and you don't believe in an afterlife, it really changes the way you approach somebody who's dying or struggling with a major health issue that could kill them, because they want some sort of hope, they want some sort of comfort, but giving that can be very, very difficult at that time. So I don't know. When I saw this video the first time, I turned it off and I literally sat here at my desk for like 10 minutes, just feeling the emotions of it. Like it was something that hit me. I mean, I get this because Fred's bringing up a point. Is there a good reason to lie? And I don't know. I don't know. This is one of those things where I do actually, because Christina here is the caller, is dealing with the ethical issue of, I want to be truthful. I want to be honest with this person. And, deal with it on that level. But at the same time, I think sometimes people who are dying don't realize the finality of it, and it can lead to some problems. Like I've seen so many people question their faith of, why would God have me go through this at this moment? And so, yeah, as long as I'm commenting, not just nodding. Yeah, I'll be here. But yeah, this is one of those issues. Like I very much resonated with the caller, like, because on the one hand, I want to be honest about this. And I want also to be comforting and to deal with them in their moment of need, because this is a real human moment for me. My human empathy goes off the chart in moments like these, because I've seen it so much. I've held so many hands of people that died right in front of me, because they didn't have any family, or they didn't have, they're in the intensive care unit and they're dying, or they're in a cancer ward and they're dying. And you're holding their hands and you can feel that moment when they're gone, and it has an effect on you. It's not a negative one necessarily, but it's a very, very human moment. And, trying to be honest and forthright in that moment. Is this, as Fred asked the question, is this a good moment to lie at this point? Or is there a way to do this as an atheist that still brings about the same comfort level, still brings about an understanding of reality? Like my uncle, one of my uncles was an atheist at his death, and he took it very, very well. Like he was, I've lived a good life. I've done things that nobody else has done. It's like he was calling back to when he was very, very young, and him and another uncle of mine and my father hiked in snowshoes along the Pictured Rocks lakeshore back in the 60s, out on Lake Superior. So it was like, he says, I've done that, and it's a memory that lives with me. And he was just having all these very special memories at that moment. And like the next day he died. And, his final words that I know of were, I've lived a good life, and, it's time for it to end. And he was just as much at peace as any other person that has religious beliefs, guiding them. But I don't know. I get the ethical dilemma. Okay. It's a very important ethical dilemma. His wife ended the friendship afterwards because my partner didn't pray enough. My partner is a cultural Christian, and we try to support. Yeah. See, this is the issue. Like, because I know how atheists are treated. There's a stigma here that we're dealing with. I think Earl told me a story of something she went through where she wouldn't pray for somebody, and so a week and a half later she was fired. And so, on a professional level, from a professional career point of view, how do you handle this? Okay, this is to me, it's a very deep issue, because end of life for me as an atheist, like I'm not in a hurry, but I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I'm finite, and I'm not going on after death. And to me, that's given me a lot of peace about it, because it's like I don't have to face this God. So I get what you're saying here, like condition honestly, think, pray with for them, and we give them psychological help. I'm not. See, that's the debate though with me. Does it give them psychological help? I mean, if it gets them through, I suppose. I mean, after they're dead, it's like you could get real callous about it and say, well, they're not thinking anything at all now, which is true. But it's a tough one for me, because I have this honesty thing. Okay, I get what Christina here, the caller, is saying. I just have this honesty thing. And how do I be honest with myself and deal with the situation? Like it's also an issue of being true to self and being helpful. So you still be thankful for the food. Yeah. No Jews. I were going to lie. Yeah, I get it. When I was in the hospital, a great attack, an online gaming friend sent me flowers. I'm in Germany. He lives in Israel, and I had to ask around to find out where I was. Honestly, Michael, you make a valid point. I think people reaching out at that moment and showing you that they give a damn by flowers. I mean, let's be fair. That person that gave you flowers did more for you than anybody who said they were praying for you. Like they actually did something. Not for people not to pray for you. Okay, there you go. My issues with afterlife theology and comfort is that religious people grieve just as hard, if not harder. It seems belief contrast with life creates cognitive dissonance, making it more painful. Yeah, that's the other thing that has been brought up when I study this issue psychologically, because if you remember, prayer can have a negative effect on people's psychology, because there's this performance, I don't want to call it performance anxiety, like answered prayers don't happen as much for serious illnesses as well. So it's like, do I really want to pray for somebody and create like that situation as well? So yeah, I get you. I don't know what to say either. I really don't. No, I mean, when you deal with prayer inside the church, it's all about an emotional experience. And when we go into the hospital, I think it's still about that emotional experience. So I don't know. I don't know. It's to me, everything is tied to emotion when it comes to prayer. Prayer is all about invoking a deity for your benefit. Okay, and I don't care what Christians say, like, I'm just praying for God's kingdom to come. Well, that's still for your benefit, because you're part of God's kingdom in your own mind. Even when you think a prayer is not self-centered, it seems to be a little self-centered when you really look at it. And so I've definitely had my problems with now, okay, if somebody asks me that's a family member or a friend and they're dying and they want me to pray for them, what would I say? And because I want to be honest, and I think also prayer kind of leads to a diluted state of mind, which may not necessarily be helpful, but at the same time, some people draw a lot of comfort from it. And, is this the time for me to assert my atheist belief about the afterlife? Is that the time, like, this is the end? If a person has a real self-doubt about whether their life had any value, they're like thinking, well, maybe my life will have value in the next. Does that give them any kind of comfort? So it's interesting. I mean, I agree with you, Ray. Prayer just doesn't make sense. And so when you're in this situation, what do you do? So, yeah, the question will pray if a dying person asks you to, yes or no. Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. And this is kind of the question I'm trying to answer by going through this video and talking about it, because I think, I don't know, we'll see. But that's the situation, and then we're going to see. Paul actually answers this question far more than Shannon does, and he does a really damn good job of talking about the various issues in a cancer ward because he was in one. So
I will never believe that it's real, but it's bringing them comfort at their time of need. And I think it's the right thing to do. But then when I come home, I feel like a piece of shit because I'm lying to my patients. And I'm just wondering which way I should really go about my job. Like, these people are dying. They have dying wishes. I try to accommodate them best I can, but I can't pray for them without really meaning it, you know?
So I have a bit of a thought, having spent a couple of years in a cancer ward as well, but as a patient, not as a person working there. I was recently an atheist when I was diagnosed, and I had so much time and saw so many of the same faces, I started to feel comfortable asking these questions. And I would specifically ask them what their policy was regarding affirming patient beliefs in that way. And what they would tell me was, that they were instructed at the cancer ward that I was in, that they basically, their policy was to affirm what the person believed, and therefore where that manifested itself, the way they told me, was that meant deflective, often being deflective when they were approached directly like that, right? So it's if they would ask, do you think this is a miracle, they would ask the person, well, do you think it's a miracle? And then basically, give them every possible affirmation that the answer they gave is a good answer, as opposed to having to lie and say that they thought that it was.
Okay, so this is actually one of the approaches that I've seen used by some atheists in dealing with this. But basically, putting the question back on the person, do you really think that this prayer is going to help you? Not necessarily lying to them, but kind of getting the person to process what they exactly want from the prayer. It is a technique that I've heard about. Well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard secular ministers say that they use with people that do believe, is to kind of be that deflective. Do you think this is a miracle? Do you think that this, God is really going to help you? And basically it's not like stating your belief about it. It's trying to get to the belief of the patient and using that to maybe bring some comfort, maybe bring some closure. So it's not it's a very interesting issue to me, because, on the one hand, you want to be truthful and honest to yourself. And part of it is, for me, as somebody who works for the normalization of atheism, like, if you tell people you're an atheist and you don't really believe in prayer, that should be respected as well. And Paul here is relating his story because he was a newly atheist person in a cancer ward. And I think he's going to eventually say that he didn't really want that because it really bothered him. And so, like, you don't want to be bothered and upset in that kind of situation if you're an atheist. But it's like, I know people that are religious, like if they ask for somebody, like some sort of cleric or a pastor or something to pray for them, they want to make sure it's like their denomination, their particular brand of whatever. And they don't have a problem with somebody saying, "Oh, you're a Catholic, I'm a Protestant minister. I'll go find you a Catholic priest to talk to you." And I say, "Oh yeah, that's fine." But if you say you're an atheist, they're like, "Oh, it gets a negative reaction." And so there's a part of me that looks at this as a normalization issue of saying, "Hey, I'll go find somebody. I should feel free to say I don't really believe prayer works and atheism is what I follow. I don't believe in a God, but I will go find somebody that will get you that person." And so to me, there's this aspect of this question of normalization, but I have seen the technique where you start asking the person questions about what they believe. So it really brings about the issue of, okay, how do I deal with this person to give them comfort and deal with the issue while at the same time maintaining my own integrity of what I don't believe. Okay, so it's like I get what Christina's asking because you're trying to be honest. So fortunately, no easy enter the afterlife beliefs and hope beyond what we can see and the problem leading to reading a real life, because there's some people that are dying and they really haven't dealt with certain issues like with family and stuff, and they have time. But I have seen people like, well, when I get to heaven, I'll talk to them about that. And they kick the can down the road. And you can say whatever you want about that, but it's like if they didn't have the afterlife belief, maybe they would go deal with so-and-so that they've had problems with for years. Okay, maybe they would deal with the issues that they present, all the time. It becomes a real issue there too, because afterlife beliefs, as I said before, can cause a person not to deal with the issues here in life on earth. And so that's a valid point too. Like when you're doing, like, I would call it pastoral care when I was a minister, but if you're a secular officiant, would probably call it, dealing with the psychology and comfort level of the patient. Part of that comfort, I would think, if I was dying, is knowing that I don't have anything against the person and they don't have against me, and we've laid all that to rest and we've dealt with the issue here now and not waited until later. Okay, like to me, I definitely want to be on my own deathbed without, unless it's a person that's just been a piece of shit to me, I don't care. But the people I love and care for, I want them to know that. And I also want, if there's anything between us, I want that resolved, because that's going to make me, get the final end with a lot more peace for me and for them, doing some good. And I do think afterlife beliefs cause people to kind of put that stuff off. Power in directing thought and speech towards a concept. Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing. It's the honesty question. Christina is really dealing with the honesty question for her own sake. And I know it's when a person's dying, we tend to put more emphasis on the patient that's dying or going through a major health struggle. But it's like you want to be ethical to yourself, because then that causes a lot of problems for you later. So, yeah, I mean, you could be saying it miscorrection. That's one of the ways. All Paul is saying is this is one of the ways that some people deal with this. The problem with a lot of hospitals is they don't have a policy on how to deal with these issues, and they just kind of trust the chaplains and stuff to handle it. But I think you need that. So yeah, I mean, and that's a very, very interesting Catholic hospital then, Michael, if they didn't direct anything towards you religious. Like if you requested that, they obviously kept that policy. So after a heartfelt prayer to thanks. Oh, we have an atheist dealie. Yeah, that's my problem too, Earl. I don't know if I can be that disingenuous. It's a deconversion issue for me as a former minister. Like it's like I felt like at the end, especially the last 3 years of my ministry, I was really lying to people when I was praying for them when they were dying or facing cancer. I had two close friends, die at the end, and before I left the ministry. In fact, it was one of the stressful causes that kind of led to the whole mishmash and mess of the way I left the faith and left my ministry. But it's part of that was when those two people died, is doing their funerals and trying to preach them into heaven when I don't even believe such a place exists. I felt like, complete piece of shit because I'm lying to people about my own personal beliefs with them. So there's the issue of lying to people that hurts yourself and your own issues just to satisfy somebody else. But I agree with you. I don't think I could be that disingenuous anymore. And that would be my problem as somebody who's deconverting, not just from Christianity, but also is still in the process of deconverting from being a pastor. Because that's an aspect that pastors face that I don't think when Christians just leave the faith, that's one thing, but a pastor, there's a whole ministry pastor thing you're deconverting from. And this is one of the issues you face. Like, I can't pray for people anymore to give them comfort because I just don't, it's dishonest to me. So it's like, yeah, I get it. I think a lot of people are desperate and scared. Empathy. Who needs it, right? I don't know. This is my take on it. This is why I have decided not to go into like secular chaplaincy. It's too much of a risk of me being in that situation, Fred, where if I can't help the person with what they want. I hear what you're saying. I hear your heart there, Fred, and it's a good one. So, I get it. Okay. Like if I can't give them what they want when they're dying, but at the same time, I like people to go to their end in peace of mind. And a lot of Christians, because of their belief, do not do that. Like, am I good enough to stand before Jesus? And they're dealing with that issue. And it's like, there's a part of me that like, if you didn't have that belief, you wouldn't be so anxious about it. So there's that. Thanks, Martin. Appreciate it. That's 2. 3 more to go. Let's see. We're a bit more secular, though. Hospitals get public funds, and they still have a small chapel and mass there a few times per week with invitations on the intercom, plus penguins. But it's passed. Yeah, I don't think I have a problem with that. Paul's going to talk about policies of hospitals in a minute, and I'll get back to that issue. But yeah, my sense is that what they're doing is basically, respecting the beliefs and rights of people. So I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things where I can see a policy of a hospital dealing with this issue, but it's something that, I still struggle with. It's why I made the decision not to be a secular chaplain. I could have very easily done it. Like, I don't know, maybe the Church of Dude needs another minister, but, and I face that problem because somebody's told me, hey, you need to make the Church of Fangs like a 501(c)(3), and I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do that because of the deconversion issues for me. So it's like, we're going to make money, I guess, as a libertarian, volunteering for taxation kind of ruffles me. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, there's a part of me that I do what I do here and I'll pay my share. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to put myself in a situation if I really can't be helpful, but at the same time, you want to be helpful. So there's that. Yeah, it's a dangerous path. So I don't know. I've gotten to the point where for me, I would have a very hard time going into a cancer ward. And if somebody asked me to pray for them, I would feel very awkward and say, hey, can I kind of get somebody else here? Can I do that? Because I don't know if I can do that very effectively for you, which is a truthful answer without getting into the whole atheist thing. But yeah, well, we basically missed. Well, you missed Paul there talking about his time in the Cancer Ward so far. So we'll see. And me laying out my own struggles as a former minister and deconverting, just not just from Christianity, but from being a pastor of 20 years. So there's deconversion on that side too. But let's continue. Let's see what Paul has else to say.
And I observed this over and over. There would be, if the person, if the family said that this was a miracle or that there was deeper meaning behind it, they would basically just nod their head and pick something out of the scenario that they could use to let them continue that particular belief. Is that something that your ward is that part of your policy as well, or maybe does your ward have a policy regarding how to deal with these interactions?
Okay, I got to stop there. I don't care what side of the atheist fence you have. If you find out your hospital doesn't have a policy about, who prays for who and the clergy stuff, you need to ask them to have one. I was so appreciative as a minister when people had these policies, because I was always directed to people. If they didn't have a pastor or something, I was always directed to people who at least had similar beliefs to mine at the time. And that just makes it so much easier. And when I was in the hospital a few years ago, I put down there that I was an atheist and I didn't want any visitation. I wasn't in a critical state. It wasn't like something super serious. And so it was serious to me and it needed to be fixed, but it was fixable. And, I put down there that I didn't, and I asked about it, and the nurse told me that they have a complete policy in that entire, hospital chain about clergy and, making sure that we respect the beliefs of the patient. And so the thing about it is then in a place that has such a policy, then you're not going to get somebody who's an atheist being asked to go pray for somebody. Okay. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Unless they're like a staff, like Christina here is, she's a nurse. And so the person is like, I really like you as a nurse. You're a good nurse. Could you pray for me? And that becomes, you need to have a policy in place. If you're in any way connected with the healthcare industry or something, and your hospital or whatever you're working for doesn't have a policy about this stuff, you need to advocate for one. It just solves so many problems by having a policy for it. It's one of those things that I absolutely recommend, because if a hospital doesn't have a policy for this, there's always going to be confusion about it. There's always going to be anxiety about it, in your staff and in people, just, in the patients. Just deal with it. Make sure you have to. And so yeah. So it's very much. She's dealing with the fact of, what do I do? Because she's definitely having this ethical dilemma. But at the same time, having a policy in place about this, if you have a believer, then we're going to have clergy that are believer pray for you. We're not going to have our staff do it unless they volunteer to join in. You can ask our staff, and if you have the standard answer, hey, we'll find you an officiant to pray for you or with you, and that becomes the way of answering the question. It takes the ethical dilemma off of, in this case, Christina could say, well, yeah, I'll go look up your belief. I'll go look up your stuff, and I'll get somebody to come and pray for you. And that's a perfectly reasonable answer. And most Christians, I never knew Christians to think that was completely a deflection or anything. So it really, I have to advocate hard for a policy on hospitals for this, because it's it made it so much easier when I was a minister, because, now I'm not stepping on an atheist's toes going in there, because I felt that was rude. Okay, like to go into somebody, I knew other ministers that were just plain bastards about it. Like, oh, they're dying, I'm going to preach the gospel to them one more time. But it was so helpful to me when I was doing this stuff to know that when I walked into a room and I didn't know the person, they wanted me to be there. Okay, that there's a level of, okay, this is something that's consensual between both parties and not something that's being forced on people. So I guess I get it. Let's see. What should I have an excitement? Valid point, Shannon. I also think, mental health facilities are a little bit lacking in hospitals during grief. That is very, very true. There was a couple of times, Shannon, when I wanted to ask somebody, hey, do we have a therapist on staff here because this person is struggling with this issue and this issue? Can we get them in here? And a lot of hospitals just do not have that. They don't have that resource. And it was kind of surprising to me. So yes, policies for atheists. Like when I put that down, the nurse that came in to me to talk to me about it, she said she was an atheist too, and she was glad that somebody did that. I said, I don't really want an officiant. I'm not dying or anything, and I don't really want anybody to pray for me. I do want to talk to the doctors and see if they know what they're doing, so, yes, a therapist on deck is definitely something that more hospitals should consider, especially when it comes to grief counseling, because the grief counselor just isn't going to deal with the person that's dying. It's the family members around that need some counsel at times. They need somebody watching, that understands the psychology and things like that of it. It's just so helpful to have people in the room, okay, that know what they're doing, and that's their job. I mean, I know it's a stressful job too. Dealing with people that are grieving all the time is a stressful job. Grief counselors get major kudos from me because it's a very difficult job, but it's like when I saw hospitals that did have them and had the resources, I was much more comforted by that. So there's that. Hospital, they figured out I was Jewish because I requested some kosher food. They sent a rabbi into my room and I was not close to dying. Okay. You're still mad? You're still mad about that? Yeah, it's like, Shannon, it's like one of the things you did for me is you got me over the stigma of therapy. And the problem is I think a lot of people still have that stigma, especially the people that are like you would most likely find in a hospital dying right now. They've been raised that therapy, if you get therapy, it's a weakness. And you kind of cured me of that. So thank you for that. So. And see, hospitals default to religious leaders to managing grief. It's unacceptable as someone in grief and as someone condescending. God help whichever priest tries to come. Oh, Shannon, you'll have to record that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But it's like, yeah, I get you. I'm going to say this about religious leaders. You get like a very basic training, and not all religious leaders go to school either. Like I went to Bible college and seminary, and along the way I got a ministry degree. And part of that was, dealing with grief, dealing, with life struggles, dealing with people that are facing major health issues. But the training in that, I'll tell you, is like 2 weeks. Like you get 2 weeks of training to kind of sort of deal with it. But there's a lot of ministers that don't have degrees at all. They just picked up a Bible and then they get thrown into that. And so you're dealing with actually people that are non-professional that are dealing with grief counseling. It's probably worse than you think, Shannon. It really is. And it's something that does need to be advocated for, is grief counseling in those places. But I don't know. It's just, it's scary sometimes when I look back to my ministry days and I know what's not available. And grief therapists are definitely necessary in moments like these, and people who are dying need some reality too. So it's very interesting. So yes, that's the thing, Cranky Elder God. It's like they leave it to the clergy to do the grief counseling, and the main tool of clergy is an afterlife belief. which I don't think is an effective tool at dealing with grief. I can tell you that for myself. I held on to my faith for a long time because of my belief in seeing my father again, kept me going in it. Like there was this emotional connection to my dad's death that, kept me in the faith because I wanted to see him again. I wanted to tell him I loved him again. I love my father very much, but it did not allow me to process the grief process and go through the process of grieving. And I ended up like being really messed up because of it. And now I remember the day that I stood in front of his grave after becoming an atheist and realizing I wasn't going to see my father again. And I also suddenly realized at that moment I truly started to grieve properly. This is 25 years later after his death. I'm finally working through the process of some of the grief and letting go and all the things that you really need to do as part of the process are stagnated and stuck because of the afterlife belief. And when you have all religious counselors inside a church, oh my God, or inside a hospital, it's like, holy crap. If their only tool is to give, like, you're going to see this person again, or all these people that are here around you are going to see you again, it really stagnates the grief process for a lot of people. I won't say it does it for everybody, but to me, at least for me, it was like it stopped my grieving process because I was always going to believe I was going to see it. He wasn't really dead in my mind. And it's only when he became truly dead in my brain, it's like, oh. And I remember standing there at the moment, tears are coming down my face. I'm having a real moment. But I also suddenly realized for the first time I was genuinely grieving over my father's death. And the problem with the afterlife beliefs, I think it keeps you from doing that. It really does. So. My mother died because she followed the counsel of prayer and turned down life. Yeah, that's the other problem. You don't want to get started on Christian counselors. I've seen you on Christian counselors, Shannon. Watched you. Yeah, their training is shit too. Oh yes, man. Oh, Matt Powell. Okay. Asking because my hubs doesn't eat pork and shellfish. The point where Messianic Jews several years ago, as their funeral, studied Hebrew. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I have a Hebrew. I have Evan. Evan is Jewish. So. Broken wrist makes typing hard. Sorry about your broken wrists. I really am. I'm not going to pray for you, though. I hope you get the joke. Yeah, let's continue on. Paul has some good stuff to say here.
Makes it confusing because I'm the only one. Everybody else is religious and into praying for these people and believing that miracles happen. I've been asked, have you seen situations like this where it turns out positive? And of course I have to say, well, yes, it does happen. And maybe that's enough of a miracle that they need to hear. I don't know.
I think that's a mistake on the part of your ward, because what if the patient is of a different faith or of a no faith at all? Like them offering to pray is actually would have caused me stress. I think if my nurses were coming in, or doctors, or all the support staff. There's so many, and I'm so thankful. I always got so angry when the families attributed, like, we were all here in chemo together for 6 months, and we all had surgeries, and these are like the most amazing surgeries that have ever happened. And they're like, well, thank you, Jesus. And I was so mad for the staff. Always, it's like, do you have any idea how much these people studied and the technology that went into making all this happen?
Thank you, science.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm sorry that you don't have a policy, because I feel like that is probably being harmful to some non-Christian.
Yes, this is the aspect I'm talking about now as an atheist. It's like, I think these hospitals, by not having a policy of just, you can't just go into a patient's room and just pray for them without their permission. There are still some hospitals that do that. There's still some Christian leaders that do that. I know fundamentalist type pastors around here that still barge in to rooms of people that don't believe or don't believe as they do and try to preach the gospel to them. You're about to face death. You're going to face Jesus. And I can't imagine the amount of stress that puts on a person. I mean, like, the one time you should be really respectful of the stress level of a patient is when they're dying or they're facing a real issue. And I'm glad that my hospital that I went to had a policy, but I can't imagine, like, if they hadn't had one, how many ministers would have come in and visited me and tried to pray for me? And I'd be like, no, man, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. Okay. So, it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of baffled sometimes at why hospitals don't have this, because they do indeed leave all the counseling and stuff like that, the dying stuff, to the clergy. And, it boggles my mind that they don't have a policy. If I went to a hospital that didn't have the policy, I'm kind of with Paul here. Like, if they came in and were praying for me, that would stress the hell out of me. Like, I would not want that at all. I just don't want the stress of having to deal with religiosity when I've spent so much time deconverting from it. Having ministers around me is anxiety inducing, because I don't have a lot of love for the ministry anymore. And I feel like it stole a lot of the years of my life. And me and my therapist go around and around with me processing more of my pastor stuff these days than just deconverting from Christians. So, from Christianity. And so I can't imagine if I'm back in that situation, I'm dying or I'm facing a major life health issue, how stressful it would be for me to see people come in and try to pray for me or convert me or whatever. It'd be like, you're stressing me out and making this worse. Go away, and not having a policy in place where you can tell people to go away. Okay. I think that's very, very interesting. So there's that, but I just don't. So there's that. Yes, Shannon Q is suffering, having to talk to Matt Paula and having broken wrists. Yeah, that's true. Very, very true. Yeah, Earl, it would be very uncomfortable for me for people to do that. It's like, you're stressing me out and I'm trying to focus on getting better. If, like, I was facing a major hill, I'm trying to focus on being better. If I was dying, it'd be like, I want to die in peace, and I don't want the stress that you're giving me right now. I've made my decision about this God thing and this Jesus stuff and all that. I just don't need that. I spent 40 years as a Christian and 20 years as a minister, and I processed all that. I'm done with it. It's like, and I've spent now, 7 years in therapy most of the time, deconverting from a lot of shit that's built up in my life from being a Christian and pastor. And now you're in front of me, dealing with me like this. Oh, hell no. I don't want that at all. Okay. I don't want that at all. And Paul makes an excellent point here, and I'm going to echo that and back him up on that. Like, it's like, no, I don't want that. At the end of my life, I don't want a bunch of people preaching at me, because that's going to stress me out. If I'm facing a major health issue, I want to focus on getting better. I want to focus on what the doctors and nurses are telling me that I need to do to get better. I'm not a very good patient because of my, defiant stuff, but I really focus down when I'm in the hospital about being a good patient, because I want to get the hell out of there. I don't want to be there. My mom worked in a hospital for years, and I just don't want to be there. Hey, Samos. Skeptically. Good to see you guys. Ray. Let's see. Dr. Curtis, somebody sincerely asked me to pray, then I absolutely would. If they were suffering, hurting physically, emotionally, it doesn't matter. I would lay on a prayer that just might create a God. Okay. Yeah, and see, that's the kind of debate we're having here tonight. Like, what do you do? And I am going to kind of say that you're going to all have to personally answer that question. I'm trying to answer it for myself, because I still live in the same community. I used to be a minister. I'm here because my mom, is not doing, it's always a weekly thing with her. I have family here, but I face constantly, like just this week, somebody asked me, "Are you still a pastor?" And I'm like, "Damn, I was a pastor like 7, 8 years ago, but no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm kind of burned out with that, you know." And I have that struggle even answering those types of questions because I really want to say no, I don't believe anymore, and I became an atheist. But I'm not really sure that's the time and place for that either. It's more about me getting on my way and not being stressed out about it. And so I just kind of, for my own mental health sake, I kind of give evasive answers. But I can't imagine being in a situation where somebody's doing that to you. So he shocked me with it. Yeah. Yeah, Jesus, that was like 7 years ago. Yeah, pretty much.
Patients in general,
100%.
but
Yeah, I would imagine
what
so.
I can't claim credit for it. I'm echoing the policy that generally is in the staff of the council where I was in, but that basically you deflect the question and you affirm their answer. Would that give you a cleaner
Mhm.
conscience at the end of the day?
I mean, a lot of my patients are religious, so it just makes it challenging for me because they'll be like, "What do you believe?" I'm like, let's look into what you believe. What do you believe? And then they'll tell me all this stuff, and they're like, if you're a believer, I'd like you to pray for me. And I can't. And initially, I couldn't do it because I'm not a believer, right? I wanted to be honest. But later on, I was like, okay, sure, I'll pray with you, just to make them feel better. And it just doesn't seem right.
I mean, pragmatically, I think about the end of my time as essentially as a pastor at a church when I started stopping believing. I can think back to all those times where all of a sudden I wasn't even comfortable because I maybe didn't believe that I would very much getting, well, you know what? Let's just have a quiet moment. I would often do, or I would have someone else do the speaking instead. I know these are going to be weird things that I'm sure you've tried. Absolutely, like doing. Let's have a moment of silence where we both pray, or those kind of
Yeah.
things. Or you saying
Yeah.
because a lot of people aren't comfortable praying out loud, right? So at least in my church, it was appropriate to say I'm not comfortable praying out loud, but let's spend a moment in silence.
Yeah, yeah. I want to get a commentary on here. There's a lot of different things you can do. I don't want people to get into this mode of if somebody asks you to pray for them, um, that there's not multiple answers to this question. I think each person is going to have to answer that for themselves and feel, find out what comfort level they have. But Paul makes an excellent point, like, moments of silence are an answer. There's other ways of doing it. For me, I don't know if that would work either. Okay, I'm just relating my own experience because to me, a moment of silence, I have problems even with that because a moment in silence for what? What are we doing? If it's about respect or something in silence is respect, I guess I get it. Maybe it's just a social thing, but there's always this bow your head in silence kind of thing. And I for me, who spent so much time in the church all the time, I don't know. I think I would have a problem with that one myself. So there's that. I wouldn't pray for them. I'm just not good at faking that sort of thing. Wouldn't be a helpful person to ask anyway. Yes. I would be angry if I were dying in the hospital, went to a random chaplain and talked to me and prayed for me. Yeah, I kind of think that's the point that Paul and I are making here about having a policy. It shouldn't be random who walks into your room. If you're not a believer, I don't want a pastor or a priest or anybody walking through that door. Okay, that's just being respectful to me as a human being. And if you are a believer, you don't really want a secular chaplain walking through the door either. Okay, so it's like, yeah. And see, when my daughters are over for me, I'll rather I thank the truckers and vegetable pickers and farmers for getting on the table. Yeah, that's probably a valid point. Yes. There's no time to make new enemies. Yes, memorable too. Okay, so your squeaky kitty says hi. Well, hi back to the squeaky king. Color correct your roots. All right, so, but yeah, he's making a valid point. There's a lot of different ways to handle this, and the hospital really needs to think about it and have a policy. And yeah, I can get behind that too.
Yeah, and we
That could
do
be
that a
something you could
lot.
try.
We do a lot of moments
Okay.
of silence. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, those are some of I have much less training in this area than Shannon, but it was a bit of a lived experience for me, and I thought maybe that might help. I don't know, Shannon, did you have anything to add?
Yeah.
No, I think that's all great. I was gonna give similar but less comprehensive advice, which was essentially just to. Sorry, I just have a drink. My throat got really dry. I guess I'm not used to shutting up for that long.
Yeah, that's probably true, Shannon. You definitely do like to talk, but most of the time you're saying stuff that I really resonate with. So thank you. So I'm glad you can laugh at yourself. It's one of the most important qualities. When I like a person is when they can laugh at themselves, and so that's great. So.
Like in a situation like that, I would just not volunteer my belief unless it was specifically asked for, and then do what Paul said and likely deflect as best I could. And if somebody asks, would you pray for me? I would say, yeah, absolutely. Like for sure. Absolutely. And, I would do my version of it, which is just, to say some internal quiet meditation about my hopes for that person. Which is the equivalent.
Yeah.
So that was still being honest with them and still,
Yeah, and that is real. Yeah.
Yeah. I do internal, and that potentially would help me work through some of that, because I'm sure it's a traumatic job in general, like working with people who are grappling with that, which would make it traumatic on you. So maybe that affirmation would be of some assistance in regards to that, while also assuaging some of the guilt related to feeling like you're being dishonest in that moment, because you wouldn't be, because you would be doing your own version of it.
Yeah.
So I would only really expose myself, I guess, in that situation when pressed, because I wouldn't feel like in that person's private moments when they're grappling with their health, that's not a moment for me to insert myself and start debating with them about.
Yeah, that's probably the most valid point. I think the issue here is the patient. You're trying to bring them some sort of comfort and get them in the right frame of mind, or help them wrestle through their issues. When you're dealing with a cancer ward, for instance, people aren't necessarily going to die. They're just facing a very life-threatening problem. But I know when I was doing people that were dying, and I held a few hands of people that were dying, it was a different matter. And then later on, when I became an atheist and I was still in the pulpit, Caught in the Pulpit was a very real book for me. I remember, going to a couple of the people that died late in my ministry, and, holding their hands and trying to be more of a comfort to them, to let them know that people were there. I didn't really have the freedom to assert that I didn't believe, because then the jig would be up. And that was the most uncomfortable time of my ministry, is praying for people who were dying while I was an atheist. And I think this is probably why I say this is a personal issue for me, why I wouldn't do that. Okay. Because it's very painful to me to relive those memories. And so I just don't want to have anything familiar like that. So, but I can see the deflection being a technique if that's something you're comfortable with. I think what really becomes the issue is, what are you comfortable with when dealing with that situation? And at the same time, being respectful of their beliefs. I know that seems hard for some of us atheists, but they're not going to change at that moment. It's not time for me to sit there and talk about how foolish they are to believe in God or how dumb it is to do this. So it's there. But yeah, it's something that I wrestle with and it's why I decided not to be a secular chaplain after coming out. It was like, I'm not going to do that. It's too painful for me to engage these issues anymore. So I don't know. I found a way. I guess if it was me and I was asked to pray for somebody, it would be more like, well, let's check what the hospital policy is. I know that sounds weird, but then you can say, but I will find what are your beliefs? Can I find you somebody that will do that for you that's of your belief, because it might work out better for you? That would be my response, because I don't think I can pray for anybody anymore. I just can't. And it's just one of those things where I've just faced that. So, I wouldn't be against it. It would be up to Shannon. So, but yeah, I have a lot of deconversion issues I could unpack. That's why I've been in therapy since I almost left. Thank you, Clergy Project, for that. Hooking me up with a secular atheist therapist has been one of the best things that's happened to me. And other than when I was in Texas, it's been every other week, and it's helped me unravel a lot of stuff. And Shannon's been instrumental in watching her videos, getting over the stigma of therapy. It's not like admission of anything. So let's see. Critter says, when my mom was in the hospice, she was supposedly unconscious, but she kept lingering on. I got the idea that she was worried about her future, so I prayed the prayer for salvation for her. And interesting. Yeah, I get that. And I don't know if you're going to change anybody's mind about the afterlife at that moment. I can tell you this. Just because people look unconscious doesn't mean they are. And it doesn't mean that they can't hear you. Like, I had a situation where the kids were debating who was going to get what in the inheritance after their mother died. I'm like, and they're right in the damn room with her. I'm like, you do realize that she could probably still hear you. And maybe this is not the place to have this conversation. But yeah, you have to be very careful about what people can quote unquote hear. Just because their eyes are closed doesn't mean they can't hear you. So, oh. All right, here, hold on. I'm going to open up. And this is kind of part of my plan, was for anybody who wants to talk about this issue. I'm going to pin up the link to StreamYard in the chat. Anybody who wants to use it. So, but you don't have to. You don't have to do any of that. But yeah, but that's kind of, they don't go on too much farther, and it's more of an end. But they got all the issues I wanted to talk about out today. So. But yeah, this is one of those issues. We have a lot of fun here usually on Saturdays, and but yeah, it's one of those issues that kind of hits me kind of hard. So I do appreciate discussing this, because this is something that came up in my ministry a lot, and then later when I became an atheist, it came up a lot. So. It was just one of those things that hits me hard emotionally. As a former minister of 20 years, praying for people in the hospital became like part of my regular life. And it was just one of those things that I still struggle with when I see people talk about it. Because I know afterlife beliefs, I don't think are always helpful in these situations, because it allows you to kick the can down the road especially like when you're early out on something you know is life threatening. And so, yeah, it's just one of those moments. So that I just began to just have a struggle with. So if anybody wants to jump in, I will gladly talk to you about that. So, yeah. Oh. Yeah, hold on. She's in her house. She's not in mine. My apartment. Probably glad too. It's a little dirty right now. But yeah, I want to see, you guys want to see the hat reveal while I'm oh, now I've got 4 hats up there. It's just my clever way of asking for money to support my streaming habit. So oh, I don't know. I don't know. Pre-supper is there. Everybody wants the newsboy. Unfortunately, so far it's the Holy Bunny hat so far. So there's that. But yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we got any more questions and answers tonight, but I still struggle with this stuff. So. I got to show you something cute. Hey, Earl, do I have permission to show the picture of the earrings you got? See, now I gotta change out my earphones to put the hat on. So hold on for just a second. Oh, look at this. This is it. You guys have got me. And the winner is this evening. So there's that. Is the Holy Bunny hat. I have to now be very careful speaking about fangs because now everything about fangs that I talk about is official because I have the hat on. So that was the winner tonight. There you go. So there's there. But yeah. All right. It's your favorite hat. Okay. I'm going to show this to you guys because Earl got a gift. The point is that they don't have to be consistent. Cranky Elder God, this is after all. But Earl received these from a friend. So the onions now, we have holy jewelry at last. So there's that. But yes, somebody made this for Earl. And I thought it was great when she showed me this. I laughed for quite a while. So, oh, but yes. So I have to be careful because this is the official holy hat of Fangs, the demigod rabbit, who is vampiric about vegetables. So, yeah, I kind of liked him too. Yeah. Well, we have Shannon, we have this whole, we have like, the skeptic has Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe. I have Fangs, the demigod bunny. So, and I'm finally being able to use my former skills as a theologian effectively again by just making shit up. So, I think you are. Yeah, you are. All right. So I'm going to add Shannon. I think this is her.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm having fun with my people,
Yeah, that's awesome. We have an overlap in people. I love the people. That's awesome. Thank you for letting me come and say hello. I'm sorry. Thank you for opening it up. I'm not sure if anybody else is coming, but I'm stoked to have. Well, actually, stoked is probably a poor choice of words, but this is something that is like near and dear to my heart. Having conversations about end of life when it comes to being an atheist. I actually did a stream about it shortly after my father died. And I often defer to Paul because he's been on the other end of it as an atheist and a new atheist in the cancer ward. But I've been a person who is a griever and not had support. And I think that there needs to be a broader conversation about what that looks like and what it should look like and what it currently looks like and what the best thing to do is, because there isn't currently good support systems in place, or like any support systems in place outside of deferring people to religious institutions to manage their grief in the times that it's necessary. That is the default, and that is the only option that is available to people. And because people see that as a viable option, others aren't offered or on the table, and it's not particularly analyzed. And I think that's super important. And that's part of the reason that this nurse was in that situation, is because we don't have a really substantive, robust mental health support system for people who are at their end of life, or people who are grappling with people they love being at the end of their life, or people grappling with themselves being at the end of their life. It's all just supposed to be intrinsically managed by whichever religious system they're involved in. And I don't think that that's adequate or acceptable. So I love that the conversation is being had, and thank you for doing a stream on it.
Well, it's an issue deep to me too, because as a former minister who used to be relied on for that, I always felt completely inadequate with actually dealing with people's needs when they were dying. Like, all I can give them is the bullshit story of you're going to get a second shot. And I was never convinced of that myself most of the time. And so it puts a lot of pressure on people that really don't know what they're doing either.
Yeah.
It's a bad situation, because like I would go in and I'm like, I have no idea how to talk to this bit, because as a clergy person, you don't get a lot of training in that. Like I said, I got like 2 weeks in Bible college during a counseling class. So it's like, and it was Christian counseling based, so they didn't really help me other than.
Sorry, I was cute. I just actually vomited on myself. Lucky my camera's off.
Yeah, I get you, because after I got out, after I got out of the ministry and I was facing all these struggles, I kept trying to find counselors that were decent, but every time I ran into it was Christian counseling. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be helpful to me, because I'm way out. And finally, the Clergy Project directed me to Recovery for Religion. And my therapist, who's been with me like 5 out of the 7 years I've been out, she's a secular atheist counselor, and she's been awesome in unraveling all that stuff for me. So
you found her through Recovering from Religion?
Yep.
Oh, I love when I hear those stories, because I've always been an advocate for them. Like, I talked to Daryl Ray as a close friend of mine, and he does like the Secular Therapy Project and is on the board of Recovering from Religion. So every time that I hear that it's exceptionally viable and is helping people, it makes me it makes me happy that I'm promoting
Yeah.
the right things and
Yeah, you are.
that they're doing a good
You
job.
are okay. You are okay. She kind of took me under wing and did me pro bono for a while because she's like, you're a very unique case and you have a lot of stuff going on. And through the course of events, that's where I got the diagnosis of autism, being on the spectrum, and then I got
High five, me too. I'm an ADHD, autism, ADHD. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So
Cool. High five.
she helped me that, and that's allowed me to manage that a lot better, and I'm less
Amazing.
stressed out. So it's like if you want a good story of the Clergy Project helping somebody find recovery religion, I'm definitely one of those. But like she still sees me at a very reduced rate every couple of weeks because 20 years of being in the ministry, 40 years of being a pastor is it affects your brain a lot more than you can get over in 12 weeks. So
Yeah, 100%. It takes a lot to undo a lifetime of entrenched thought processes. It's not easy to overcome, and it's not easy to manage or even understand. Like sometimes you have tacit things that are implicit to your thought process that you don't even think about, that are impacting you in ways that you don't even realize until somebody else holds a mirror up to them. So I'm so glad that you had that, and I'm so glad that it was available to you, and I'm so glad that it was beneficial. And good for you for trusting yourself and taking the leap to do something that makes you vulnerable, even though it's hard.
You helped with that.
I did?
Because I started watching some of your stuff, and the biggest problem I was having, because all my life, I was told, if you went to a shrink, that meant you were weak and all this other stuff. And you kind of destigmatized it for me.
Really?
Yeah. So you helped with that. And then I'm like, there was a lot of stuff. Like when I was in therapy, I was struggling with that stigma, and I found your channel and started watching some of your stuff, and that helped me get through that because I always dealt with the emotional feeling of, I shouldn't be here. I'm just being stupid and weak. And so you kind of helped with that. So it really helped me get over that stuff. It normalized therapy to me. And so
oh my gosh,
you were definitely part of that, Shannon. So I want to thank you for that. So
thank you. No, like, thank you. I don't even know what to say. That's
I'm cheering up.
I mostly just want to reinforce to you that the acknowledgement of your own vulnerabilities is actually a strength. Denial of your own vulnerabilities is a weakness.
Yes,
because
I agree with that now. Yes.
Yeah, and you were strong enough to do that, to make yourself a better person and prioritize yourself, knowing that it would make you better for others in the world, and that is exceptionally important. And you don't know me, and I don't know you, and I don't have any right to say this, but I'm proud of you, and thank you for doing that for yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for making a channel to pave the way for others.
Yeah, I've been doing this about 5.5 years, but it's just I just wanted a platform when I got out. Maybe the pastor's desire to be in a pulpit never left me, but
yeah.
I like, nobody's talking about deconversion enough, and nobody's talking about normalizing it and getting it so people aren't stigmatized because they say, hey, I'm struggling with my faith and I want to consider it for a while. I used to see people like, why do you want to do that? Why are you doubting? And I'm like, this is a perfectly normal thing for people to do. I saw it in the ministry all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that people leave faith. They sometimes come back to it. So it's like, but just normalizing the ability to have doubts and talk about it, it's just, to me, was just a real issue. And then as an atheist, I always saw atheists being misdefined and, misunderstood. And, so I felt I should push back against that too. So, but yeah.
A rising tide and all that. Absolutely. The more voices and the more diverse voices that we have, who've had a different breadth of experience, the more people, like, one day I see in a future for you, you're going to be on a stream with somebody and they're going to say the type of thing that you just said to me, which is impactful to me. And because, you're behind a camera, you're in a room by yourself often, and you think to yourself, what am I doing? Nobody cares. You read the comments, and most people are like, just die or you're stupid. And you, so that was very meaningful for me. And I see that for you in the future. What you're doing clearly is gravitating towards an audience who care about what you have to say, and it resonates with them. And that's important. So good for you.
I mean, and the streaming has really helped. I was really nervous about it at first, but it's created me a community. It's created me a community, and now I have a good community, which kind of has replaced my church community. So there's good people here, and very diverse viewpoints at times, but I respect that, and we talk about it. So it's kind of nice. Is
that your favorite thing about what you're doing? Is like cultivating a community of people who are like-minded, or?
Yeah. Well, when you get out, like, one of the first things that I noticed when I left the church is like, I feel so alone. Like I feel, it's like you're not connecting with people every week. And I was lonely for a long time. And this has helped that quite a bit. I've got to work with some pretty fantastic people, and it's been nice since I started streaming more. I still plan on going back to doing a few videos, but I've been taking a streamer break kind of thing for a while. I think about what I want to do. Definitely some changes. So,
awesome. Well, I've enjoyed what I've seen of your channel recently, and like I liken it. When I deconverted initially, I likened it to swimming, only I was like holding rocks that I felt like I had to hold the entire time.
Yep.
Then all of the sudden I realized I could just let go of these fucking rocks. I could just let them go.
Exactly.
But everybody around me was still holding their rocks, swimming. And I was like, you can just let them go. And they were like, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to rationalize or justify or talk about how we can let go of these rocks. It's important to us that we hold these rocks. So we're going to continue holding these rocks. And I felt like I was just looking around me like, guys, we can all just let go of these rocks. And nobody wanted to talk to me about it. And they felt like I was crazy for wanting to talk to like the allegory of the cave, kind of, only swimming with rocks. That's how I felt. Yeah. Like, I'm going to be way over here. So I completely, and then I found YouTube. That's kind of why I turned to this. I turned to YouTube initially because I was like, I just want to listen to people that think like me, just to know that there are some, because there's none of them around me and nobody will talk to me about this. And then I started to find people to talk to about it. And then I realized that a lot of people were very caustic and vitriolic. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this actually does represent me. And I kind of decided, well, maybe I should represent myself then if I'm not seeing representation, because maybe other people aren't. And it sounds like you found the same sort of path, like where not necessarily that people were being caustic or whatever, but like what your particular story and version of deconversion wasn't as represented as it needed to be. So you filled that niche.
Yeah, it's been, I know that there are certain people that gravitate toward my channel when they find it. Most of them are deconverting and they still have a lot of questions. And I'm no expert, I'm no psychologist, but I've been doing this deconversion thing inside and outside the church for like 10 years. So I get the process because I've been through it, and I'm just a friend. I'm just trying to be a friend.
You have great hats. Yes. You have a wide variety of hats.
Yeah, well, because see, I really hate begging for money as a pastor. I just, I don't want to get on there. Would you please give a super chat? Because I would love to do this full time, but I'm a long way from that. But it's just like, I said, what's a fun way I could do this and ask for money? And like, I don't wear hats like in real life. So, so I'm like, I said, okay,
so you're using all your super chat money to acquire various hats. It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle now. And then I asked my artist, I Killed Earl, to do a rabbit symbol, for my stuff, and it degenerated into this weird cult that we have now created. So the Holy Bunny hat, when I ask Catherine, I have to be very careful about what I say about the deity. So, because it becomes official dogma. So, which
Do you mind if
illustrates.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought there was a pause.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, we know I'd like to talk, and I probably talk too much. I'm working on it. What type is it okay if I ask what denomination or type of pastor were you before you deconverted? I haven't been that deep in your channel yet.
I grew up in Assemblies of God Pentecostal boy. So I have all kinds of stories, like, when I sometimes get frustrated when I hear people talk to Paul about miracles and stuff and how there's no way that things could grow that fast. And I'm like, you obviously haven't gone to a Pentecostal church. A miracle will go from I have a headache and I got prayed for to brain cancer, and 50 other people are now experiencing it within 2 weeks. So it's like, the growing legend thing just boggles my mind. But yeah, I started off as a Pentecostal boy. I became a Pentecostal minister. I was ordained in the Michigan district for 8 years, licensed for 2. I left that because I had a lot of problems with them. And then I became a congregational church independent for like 10 years, where I became more of a moderate, I guess, Christian, and then to become more liberal. And that was the most freeing moment for me, because I was able to just study the Bible and, dig deep into it and try to answer all my questions. And the more I tried to answer questions, the more questions I got.
Been there, friend, been there.
So by the time I got done, it was like I spent the last 3 years in the pulpit. 1 year I was a deist. I was like, I don't believe Christianity anymore. Dan Barker was kind of instrumental in that.
Okay.
Because his quote rattling in my head was, "Sin doesn't have any real reality." I was like, and I was preaching on sin, and I'm like, God, you got to show me how sin is a reality and not just something in the book. And I sat down, and that didn't happen. So an unanswered prayer. And I'm like, Ed, son of a bitch, you like make your money telling people stuff that's not even verified to be true. And, I went from being a sincere believer in one moment to be feeling like a con artist the next. And then I spent about a year being a deist. And the last 2 years in the ministry, I was an atheist. So
common story, though, too. Like, that is a super common story. Like, you are not alone in that. I'm sure that, like, the therapists you're working with and other people in your community have relayed that to you. But we know so many people where that, like, just is the case, because it's a difficult community to escape from, because it creates your livelihood, your community. Exactly. like it engulfs your entire life to a point that it's difficult to, like, in a capitalistic society especially, you can't just be like, oh, okay, I don't believe this, I'm leaving, because you invest yourself into a life where, oh, I didn't train to be a worker for anybody else except God.
Yeah, I never had, like, the only thing I've been able to find to do, I went back to school. So I did get a legit bachelor's degree from Ferris State University. So, and I parlayed that into a teaching career for a while, but the hypersensitivity and autism, which I didn't know I had, caught up with me there, and I started blacking out at work. And they couldn't find anything physically wrong with me. So I came back to Michigan, started talking with my therapist again, and like, oh, I think you're hypersensitive and autistic, and your nervous system is getting overloaded. So, and so that was a good revelation for me. But yeah, I spent a couple of years as an atheist. Did not go to the Clergy Project, which I now tell pastors that are going through that, go to the Clergy Project as soon as you feel comfortable, even while you're still in the pulpit. It's the one thing I did wrong. Like, it could have been very helpful in coming out instead of the way it was. So
you didn't do anything wrong. Don't tell yourself stories about the things that you did wrong in a situation that your environment cultivated for you and society facilitated for you, and didn't present you with exit options.
You sound like my therapist.
It's almost like I know some things about psychology.
But yeah, I've been told that before, but that's why I'm still in therapy, because you still deal with the emotional guilt, whether you rationally get it or not, your emotions are still wrapped up in that stuff.
Absolutely.
And so, but I always encourage people, as soon as you think you're an atheist and go to the Clergy Project, go. The quicker you get there, the better.
Well,
And
thank you for that.
I know so many atheists in the pulpit now, like, because I'm still
Yeah.
part of that community. I can't
Mhm.
really relay a lot of that because a lot of it's confidential because they're still in the pulpit. And
Please
some of them
don't. Yeah.
yeah, some of them are in very dangerous situations where if they were
Mhm.
revealed. So, but I know so many now, like and this is just to me the tip of the iceberg that gets connected with the Clergy Project. I can't imagine how many there really are that are just in the pulpit every week doing it because it's a job. They don't believe shit. So, but they don't have a way to get out. Like,
Yep.
what do they do now? You're 62 years old. You've been doing this all your life. What are you going to do now?
Yeah, there's no exit strategy.
There's no exit strategy for you. And yeah, it gets really hard. I at least, I was still in my late 40s. I got to go back to school and I've been a teacher and I'm thinking about going back to that, but I don't know. I kind of like YouTubing. So it's
Keep
been
doing
fun.
it.
So, but yeah, it's it's been a long journey, but here I am talking to people and trying to keep my folks in the chat. I have several that I saw tonight that came here because had a lot of questions and they stuck around. So they were deconverting and they're still here. So
You know what? The thing that you don't realize, and it'll become apparent to you as you go along, is there's all kinds of people in the chat. And chat, I love you. You're the fucking bomb. And I know most of you. And you guys are the lifeblood of everything. But this is an important point, and I think you'll understand it once I get it out. There are people that are not in the chat. There are people that will watch this video later. There are people that will watch this video now. There are people you will never hear from. They will never leave a comment. They will never engage with you on social media. They will never answer a post or a poll that you did on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. You will never know they're watching you, ever. And those are the people that, regardless of what happens, that I'm still doing it for at all. Like, I barely post videos now because my son's 14 and man, he's a full-time job at 14. But I don't leaving. Like, I'm just like, no, it's intermittent right now while I'm parenting. But when I get discouraged, and when I have been vastly discouraged in the past because of all of the things that are immediately in front of me, and this might be the best advice I give you, the things that are immediately in front of you that are a part of like the really close community, that's like a clique of people that have your ear and that you see the most, those are important to listen to and to, take into account and to deliberate with yourself and to like figure out morally where you stand on. But ultimately, you need to stand on your own integrity, figure out what that means. And you need to speak to the people in the back of the auditorium, the people you can't see, the people who aren't in the front row, the people who are listening because it's important to them, but they're afraid to engage or they may never engage. But this is going to be one of the things that is iterative on their path towards becoming the best version of themselves.
Okay.
And you may never know who they are, but they exist.
Yeah,
and those are the people that I always speak to, even when it's hard. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I've started to get that way. Like I've definitely, like, I look for stats of the stream, and it's like later on it's like 300 people, and like I don't remember 30 or more people being in chat at any time. So it's like, so there's a lot of people that are watching later and doing things later, and so I've become aware of it since streaming. Like when I was just doing videos, you could kind of see that, but like I never knew if I didn't get near the comments. So it's like, now I get a lot of comments, but I still see a lot of people in the back of the room. Like they're just sitting there listening and they're processing something and they're doing something. So yeah, I'm going to keep working on that because, my biggest issue is always finding, okay, what's the audience for what I'm doing? And it's like, who am I trying to talk to? And it's probably for the quiet person that's in the back of the room that's like, I don't know what to think about this stuff. It's like, I just don't know what to think about this stuff. Can somebody give me a different perspective? and and they hunt around the YouTube channels and they find something like this and they listen. So
focus more on what you need to say than who you're trying to attract.
Yeah.
Because if you're standing on your own integrity, your own message, and you're saying what you think is important, if you're getting the message out that you feel like needs to get out, the people who that message resonates with will find you, and they will tell other people. Don't attempt to cultivate. Attempt to just stand on, build yourself and what you uniquely have to say. You don't need to pander to attract anybody.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to this because I'm a pastor. I'm trying to find a way where it doesn't seem like it's pastoring anymore, but it's more me being me. And
that must be hard.
It's a struggle, I'm going to tell you, because I spent 20 years in the ministry pandering to people, trying to keep them happy. And now it's like, I don't know if that's the right way to move. And I still emotionally, I think I get caught up in, okay, is there anybody going to get mad at me about this one? And it's like, you know what? I just need to say it.
Especially when you're autistic, because the overlap in the similarities between, preaching to specifically cultivate an audience with a specific ideology versus, speaking about a message that resonates with you individually based on your life experience, those seem similar in principle when it comes to the practice of what you're attempting to do. So the practice seems like it's functionally the same thing. It's the motivation that's different, right? Like your motivation in that previous instantiation of yourself was that you were told that this is what you need to do. This was your job because yada, yada, yada. And you believed it because you were indoctrinated to do so. Now you've come out of it and you want to help people see what your experiences did. No one is paying you to do this. You're doing this on your own. By virtue of doing it on your own, you can get monetary benefit if it resonates with people and more people come. So I can see how that's similar. The way to reconcile that with yourself is to make sure that you're always standing in your integrity and your honesty. That's what I do. That's why I never took a sponsor in my life. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, and Paul does, and I didn't because I was always afraid. And now I know it's because I'm autistic. I was recently diagnosed as well. I was like, somebody might think that I'm doing this for the money. And if they think I'm doing it for the money, they may not trust my motivations. And if they don't trust my motivations, they won't hear the message that I'm sending out. And if they don't actually receive the message I'm sending out because they're questioning my motivations, then I may not be able to help them. So I just tried to make it clear that I didn't care about that, but also I needed it. I was a single mom, but we just got divorced, and I wanted that to be the case, but it's like a hard line to once you get integrity to figure out how to do that and pay your bills. I get it.
It's like when you were dealing with that nurse, it's a question of integrity for her. And it was like, and she was wrestling with that, which I was glad she was wrestling with it. That shows
100%. Yeah.
So it's like, that's
the alternative.
Yeah. It's same thing for me, which is like, I'm wrestling with most of it's my motivation, because I find myself slipping back into, being popular. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be popular. I think I'm just going to let popularity happen. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, fine. But it's just like, I want to stay on point with what I'm trying to do, which is, I set for myself this mission to normalize atheism and deconversion, and that's what I'm going to do. So it's like, I don't want atheists to be treated differently simply because they don't believe in stuff. It's like, I see every religious type, even if they're different faiths, they'll at least give each other a monicum of respect. But atheists, for some reason, we don't get any, at times.
And we do. We totally do. And people don't even realize it because they think, oh, I heard you're an atheist when I interact with you. You said, I'm an atheist. And I was like, oh, okay. But what they don't realize is religion is so integrally like enmeshed within so many different societal aspects that when you are an atheist in important situations, you are othered just definitionally by either not being included or by being seen just by your mere existence as being confrontational.
Yeah.
Like I find that in my life, like just my mere existence is seen as confrontation.
Yes, I hear you.
Like I'm not starting a fight with you, but just because you know me and you know that I'm, not a moron, and you know that I think that what you believe isn't true, just that alone is enough for you to perceive me as a vector of conflict. Because hey, well, like if you think you're so smart and you think you're as smart as me, and you think that what I believe is stupid, like that, like all of that stuff like interacts with so many different aspects of interactions. Once people find out, it's a lot more than people realize, I think. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, but I've gotten that since I started this thing. Just people come in and you're evil, you're this, you're that. It's like, and I also have, my channel's named The Rabyd Atheist. It's a play on my last name, Rabyd. So.
Okay. Oh, that's where that came from. I'm like, that's not how you spell rabid.
The whole rabbit thing came out of the closed captioning would translate that as rabbit. And then I had a friend do a video with me, and he's BS-less, and he put the tricks rabbit on the front of it. And since then, it's just grown out of my control. So it's become all that. But yeah, but they think that I'm going to foam at the mouth and get in their face. And then they discover that I'm actually interested in having a conversation. It kind of throws them. So it's like,
that's good.
Yeah,
so when you're in conversation, do you have a more like a dialectic sort of like exploratory approach as opposed to a confrontational approach, or are you somewhere in between?
Because I resonate with a lot of theists because I was in it for so long. I know why they believe what they believe because I had those same reasons. And I get it. I get it that they're not going to jump from being a fundamentalist evangelical to being an atheist in 2 hours. It's not going to happen.
No. Yeah,
so you have a discussion with them about some of their beliefs, and they're like, oh, go think about it, and maybe the next time they're like, yeah, I think you're right about that. It becomes a long running thing. I've tried to be very gentle about it. There are a few theists that push my buttons because they just want to be belligerent, but I have pretty good mods. I have pretty good mods, so they don't. So I'm very appreciative of them. So
you do.
They keep me from getting attacked too much. I'm not interested in that kind of confrontation when I talk to people who believe. I just want to talk to them, and have them listen and get a good dialogue going. And I think the streaming helps because I get to see a human face to the atheist too, because it's easy to, look at a profile picture and a name. And after a while, when they start having a discussion with you, it's like they can't treat you like a thing anymore. You're a person. And so I've had a couple conversations that I've turned around really quickly, and because of that. So, I'm not expecting. I remember what I was like, and I know this is a long journey, and I'm just part of somebody's journey. And I'm not going to be the thing that completely convinces them about anything. So, but I hope to make them think. So that's kind of my whole goal. Just think about it, please. So.
You never know what'll be the final thing too. Like when we all think about our own deconversions, it wasn't like we woke up one day and we were like, wait a minute, God created people twice in Genesis. That's it. I'm a Christian. I'm not a Christian anymore. Like it takes a while. Like I could put it on the path of years for me till I finally was like, oh, and I can't even pinpoint the moment. Like I can maybe pinpoint the year, but I can't pinpoint the moment that it was Maybe I could. It was when I was reading Numbers and I read the test for the unfaithful wife. And I just like, I literally threw the book and was like, fucking God damn it.
Yeah,
Okay.
for me, it was the whole theology of sin and Jesus. And as somebody with a master's degree in theology, I was like, this doesn't make any sense, and there's no way I can make it make sense. And it's like it just got odd for me, and I'm like, this doesn't work as a whole. And after a while, I'm just like, okay, if that's not real, that's not real, that's not real. Okay, so I'm in fantasy land now, and I got to figure out how to get out.
For me, initially, it was the soul because I started studying neuroscience, and I was like, oh, there's no room for this. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can make room for it. And then it was morality.
Yeah.
Because like I had a really catastrophic event happen in my life, and I did what you're supposed to do, which is turn to the Bible, right? Because the word of God is going to comfort you. And the more I read, the more I was like, this is awful, this is awful, this is awful, this is awful. Like this doesn't, like I was just like, I'm going to read it cover to cover. And I'm like, oh, good. Now I've got two crises going on. Now I have this personal crisis and this existential theological crisis all happening simultaneously because I did the thing I was fucking supposed to do to make me feel better. That's great. So now I don't know what I believe, and I'm still no one's helping me with this crisis that's happening in my life. So great. Fantastic.
But it's similar in that emotional sense, I think, for all of us. It doesn't matter what the issue is. It's like you come to this realization that this doesn't line up with reality. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and it's at that moment you start having those crises, and it goes downhill from there. For me, it was a constant battle almost since I left seminary. Like seminary just introduced to me so many concepts, like, the multiple writers of the Pentateuch and all the stuff that Paul talks about. It's like,
I was just going to say, you're starting to sound like Paul because he's just consistently reinforcing it with me. I spent way more time talking about Gary Habermas and Sean McDowell than any reasonable human should have to spend. I was outside last night. I was like, I'm just trying to drink a pina colada on the patio because it's a nice night. Why are we out here talking about the Q source? Whether or not it's viable. What the fuck is my life? What is happening?
And the thing is, I can have this conversation with you about how sometimes I feel ridiculous about that. But if I talk to Paul, I could have that conversation and be totally having fun with it too. So 100%. That's where I live. That's my knowledge base. And so it's like, because I like with Habermas, for me, it was like, dude, this guy's, everybody's giving him creds and like, I'm not seeing it.
Did you see Sean McDowell's new book? I don't know if this is a secret or not, but Sean McDowell's new book, like his new version of his original book, I guess, is like giving credit to like Jonathan McClatchy and the like McGroupies who do the what is it? It's like grass is green, therefore the Bible's real. What is it? Oh shoot.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it either.
Yes, like it's Jonathan McClatchy, Lydia McGrew. Eric does it also.
Yeah.
No, it's not minimal witnesses. Minimal facts. Minimal facts is that minimal facts. The minimal facts hypothesis, where like it's all about like undesigned coincidences. That's what it fucking is. It's undesigned coincidences. Yes, but undesigned coincidences just hates Gary Habermas and thinks he's stupid. And I'm like, oh, Sean McDowell is like crediting them in his book. And I love a Christian versus Christian fight. So I can't wait to see how that pans out. I'm stoked to see how that pans out.
Like when Paul did his video, he had the one guy that I know has challenged like the zombie horde and several things in the Bible. And it's like, dude, why do you keep the other resurrection accounts then? Like what? There's more zombies involved. That's why it's less credible. I mean, it's like,
was he like he was referring to? Was it Matthew's?
Yeah, probably.
Matthew who has the zombies, right?
Yeah. So or it's Luke. Maybe it's Luke. But it's like the one scholar dismisses that as real, like it's an addition or something made up. I'm like, well, if those resurrections are made up, why is one dude at the end not made up? Like, on what basis do you make that statement? So it's
because someone knew where to buy bread one time. That's why.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't. Some of the reasoning, now it's just like, it's obviously ridiculous to me now, but back then it wasn't so much so because I was fighting with it. So yeah, I got to get back to my book on my whole deconversion process. It's just, I'm still processing so much of it. So
yeah, and you're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to take your time.
yeah, I'm taking my time with it, because when it comes out, it'll be me at a point where okay, I'm comfortable with talking about all this stuff. So
are you not out like friends, family wise yet?
My eldest son knows, because he was the first subscriber to this channel. But
hello, Ed's eldest son.
Yeah, but he's like reconverted to Christianity, and he's a head coach at a Catholic university now. So it's like, I have to ask questions when I see him in a couple weeks. So it's like, but the rest of them, like, my mother's a devout believer, always has been for a long time. My daughter and my son-in-law, and my daughter-in-law. I'm not sure about my middle child. He's kind of going through a rough time right now. So I don't think faith is helping him at all. And he's never really believed in anything when he was in the church. So I think he's just like, it's all nonsense. I'm just going to go live my life. So
there's ways to navigate that too. Like, we have very theistic children and atheistic children and undecided children. And I'm a massive advocate, and I've said this before, and if you've watched me, you will have seen me say this. I am a massive advocate on, you teach your children how to think, not what to think.
Yep.
And so long as our kids are good people,
yep,
I don't really intervene, because I'm not going to impact our relationship by constantly having theological debates to try to get them to convert to my position.
I've always said that, like, I'd rather have my relationships with my kids than be right. Like, I'm not interested in fighting with them. I just want to love them. It's like, it's kind of worked out. It's kind of worked out for me so far. It's like, we don't bring it up anymore. I think they're all PKs, so they have that issue. Sometimes they tend to be a little judgmental of others because they were always being judged. So it's like, I've noticed that in a lot of PKs where they kind of get judgmental of others because they're always in this glass house where everybody's giving them shit because they're not the perfect kids and stuff like that. So, like, they're kids. Like, what do you expect? So I've had those discussions with my kids too, and a lot of them were mad at me for leaving the ministry. They were very proud of their dad, the pastor, and not so much as dad, the not pastor, but I think they're getting over that. So
that's hard to grapple with as a parent too, because that it kind of means that I've taught you to respect a certain kind of thing, and you did.
Yep.
And now I'm not the thing I taught you to respect.
Yeah, I have a lot of struggles with that. Once again, this is why Ed, the Rabyd Atheist, is in therapy every other week. I have a lot to talk about. I deal with a lot of guilt, like with advice I gave, to people, like the whole, you need to submit to your husband, and that's what the Bible says.
Let's talk, Ed.
and now it's like, no, man, there's some guys that should just defer to their wife on a lot of issues, because they're better at it. It's like,
well, it's not even just defer to anybody. It's just, have a conversation. Communication is the most important thing.
Exactly.
Like
that's figure out who's good at what, and all of you do that.
Well, it's not even just who's good at what. Like, you can have an equivalent skill set but different perspectives, right?
Yes.
That's one of the reasons that Paul and I work so well. Is Paul and I both intellectualize probably too much, like we overthink things, right? Like, and both of us look at things a very different way. Like, as I'm autistic ADHD, and I'm not entirely convinced he's not, but he's not been diagnosed, but we'll find out eventually. but We don't have fights, we have discussions. Like,
Yes.
so if there's a point of contention, we have a discussion. And the reason that those usually happen is because we both see how something should happen differently. And
Yep.
if you have good communication and you're open to changing your mind, which is what we should be doing as, you know, people who are secular, who already changed their mind and realized the benefit of it.
Yep.
Because you realize that sometimes you can see things maybe from the incorrect perspective or with not enough information. This Q source conversation is probably a good example of that. I was saying I think the Q source is stupid, and he said it's not stupid. And we were sitting out on the deck having a conversation about why it's not stupid, and we were going back and forth. And I was making points that I thought were very valid, and he wasn't addressing them. And then he got to the point that he said, well, then why was the Sermon on the Mount only in, I think, Luke? And I was like, wait. So why didn't you open with that? Because if the Sermon on the Mount is something that's only in one place, but like there's some quotes from it, like then there seems to be overlap. If you had opened with that, then that would have helped me. So like if we have conversations about how we understand things, because both of us have strengths in multiple regards. There's no such thing as a person being the strong person in this regard and the person being the weak person in this regard.
Yeah. Yes.
There's just different levels of understanding and different ways of communicating or understanding things or learning. And if you understand that those are sometimes disparate, communication is the resolution for that. So it's not a matter of someone is strong here and another person is weak and they need to lead because they're the strong one in this regard.
Yeah,
It's okay, well, let's communicate about so that we both understand what the best way to do thing is, and we can reciprocate with our understandings and strengthen each other. That is what a relationship is.
Yeah, that's one of the things about deconversion that I want to deep dive sometime, how faith sometimes, because you both have certain assumptions, you just don't talk about certain issues. Like you avoid them because they're already assumed in both people's heads, like who's in charge of what. So it's like, yeah, it's an issue because, you know, I'm divorced now. My marriage didn't make my leaving the faith. So, but it's
Cheers.
like,
me either.
Yeah, so it's like I got a whole chat full of those people, so we all kind of hang out together. But it's the issue became she was assuming certain things were there that we didn't need to talk about, and I'm like, no, we need to talk about it. You know, it's like I don't want to be, and I was always pushed to be in charge, and I'm like, I don't want to be in charge all the time. It's too much pressure. Like it's like I'm tired of being the head of the house. I don't want to do it anymore. You know, it's a side that I don't think people talk about enough is like when some husbands come out of faith, they're like, I just want to have this partnership now. I don't want to be in charge all the time kind of thing. And yeah, it's a discussion that needs to be had. I've had that discussion with a couple men that have come out of there. They're like, I don't want to be the head of the house anymore. It's too much pressure. I would like, you know, to share that, you know, some way, somehow, and say, well, maybe you need to talk about it. You know, like,
that's really good. Like, I'm one of those like blue-haired feminists, like woke people that people are consistently talking about. And I actually think that people so specifically focus on women when it comes to that aspect, like being the head of the household and women being subjugated, but also men are thrust into a role.
Well, we're told to take leadership. What if you suck at being a leader? You know, it's like you really have to work at it. Like, and it makes you have a lot of anxiety and
feel inadequate consistently.
You feel inadequate. You end
because you're not communicating or asking for partnership. Yeah,
you're automatically assuming those things because you're believers, and it's like I don't think that's healthy. But a lot of men come out of faith and they're like, well, how do I fill this role now? You know, I'm the husband, the guy. What am I supposed to do now? And they don't know. They've been told one thing all their life, and they just have not the faintest clue. And I think it's a stressful moment for them. I know it was for me. Like when I finally left the faith and got out of the church and wasn't a pastor anymore, that was like a big issue for me. Like, how do I handle this, in my marriage? And it ended up being a deal breaker for us, because I was like, I'm not going to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to communicate and work on the relationship. So it's like, I'm tired of the Christian assumptions. I can't work with them anymore. So, and yeah, it was like, it was a hard decision for me to make, but I feel so much better now. So.
Good. I'm glad. Those are good and sensitive conversations to have, and that I don't think that people recognize need to be had enough, because I think often people just assume that men who exit those types of relationships were the people who were the subjugators, and therefore they were the people who were like the bad people in the relationship, and the other person absolutely needs entirely the support, and they can be left aside. But that circumstance is cultivated by the culture and the religion that they're brought up within, and they're attempting to fulfill that role successfully or otherwise, because that's what they're told they're supposed to do, and they're not really given a guidebook. And being a leader while being respectful, while dealing with like all of that is difficult as well, because that's not the natural course a relationship takes if you have a healthy relationship. So men also aren't taught how to have a healthy relationship in that environment, and should be supported as well. So those conversations should happen more, while also respecting the fact that some of the things men do in those circumstances, I'm not saying you, do subjugate, abuse, and but it makes it hard for the men. Like it makes it difficult for the men though, right? Because it's difficult to acknowledge that that's the case while also saying, help. Like, what do I do better? What do I do different? Because you're in a defensive posture.
Yeah, because that's probably the only thing I don't like about that debate, is I felt like I was in a defensive mode, like trying to, apologize all the time. But it's like, I've got my own issues here too. Like, it's like, I didn't want all that. Sometimes I just didn't want to deal with it. It's like, I knew a ton of men that would come through my office as a pastor. It's like, I just don't know how to lead like this. I don't want to lead like this. It's like, it doesn't fit me. And I'd be like, well, you know what the Bible says. And it's like, now it's like, that's a problem, because you're forcing a lot of men into these roles that they just don't feel comfortable with. And they're very anxious about it. They're very depressed about it. It's bad news. And then when they come out, it's like, should I spend my time apologizing for all the crap I did, or should I just acknowledge I just didn't feel comfortable in it? And now I'm glad to be out.
I think there's space for both. I think that you should always be accountable for what you do to other people.
Correct.
Right? Because everybody always has a choice. You should always be accountable for what you do to other people, but there's a way to be accountable for what you do to other people while acknowledging that some of it was because of circumstance, and you're escaping that circumstance because you want to never do that again. Like, there's a way for both of those things to happen.
Yes,
I think. But that is a difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah, it's just, I knew so many men that were like damaged by their faith because of the expectations for men.
No doubt.
That the Bible gives them. And they're like, I don't fit that. I don't want to be that. It's like, and so there's a lot of them that come out to deal with that too. I've run into that a couple times on this channel and with private messages. Like, people will send me like, what do you do about this? I'd never felt comfortable with this, and I always felt bad about it. I said, well, you need to acknowledge that it was bad, but then, you need to process the emotions and get through it. It's like, and be a better person, now. And that seems to work pretty well for most of them. It's just, there's a two-sided coin in that whole debate, where I think a lot of men are forced into something, and the misogyny is reinforced in them when they really didn't need that. They just didn't want it. They didn't need it. They saw the value in their partner, and they're like, I think sometimes she makes more sense than me. It's like, and they want to have
But
that
they did it
conversation,
anyway.
but they did it anyway. And it's like, well, you have to acknowledge that you did it anyway, and you can only blame societal pressure for so much. You make your own decisions. Right. So it's like, but we can't acknowledge that the society was kind of shit to all of us, and so we got to fix that too. So there's a lot of multi-layers in this that I've seen. So for me,
there's a lot more. Sorry, go ahead.
For me, it was just I don't want to be the head of the house authority figure like the Bible says anymore. I want something different. I want a different relationship here. And I wasn't sure what that was, honestly, Shannon. I was just like, I don't want that anymore. It's like and there's a lot of processing I think some men have to go through to get to what they actually want and what's beneficial for both them and their partner. So it's like, it's a hard conversation to have. And a lot of men are told not to talk. So don't talk about it, just deal with it. So, and
that's an unfortunate thing. Like you need to be able to grapple with I think that more people need to have open dialogue about men who deconvert in relationships where they were, house heads or whatever, because of the culture, society, religious belief or sect or whatever that they were brought up in, because they felt pressured to do something and did it because they were pressured. And what did that feel like for them? That's valid. Yep. What it felt like for them is valid. But also because they need to grapple with the fact that and if women were, and if the roles were reversed and women were in that situation, they would need to grapple with it too, right? Yes. It's about what societal pressure, religious pressure, community pressure, cultural pressure can put someone in the position that they can justify even though it doesn't feel good, and what that doesn't feel good feeling is, and why you push past it, and how you can prevent yourself from doing that in the future. And you can't do that without acknowledging it. And we should want people to analyze and acknowledge it so that more people broadly stop doing it. Because we can't just say, you shouldn't do it because you're just intrinsically bad. But that's not a solution. That's just a condemnation. And if we're solution oriented, we want men in those situations to say, okay, well, I was in this situation. I didn't want to do it. Hopefully, knock on wood, didn't want to do it. I did it anyway. Why? You still need to be accountable, but you need to grapple with that why so that you can prevent yourself from, when you encounter something akin to that why in the future, you make a different choice and you treat people better and you feel better about yourself as a result. And then society is better because more people do that.
But to me, it's just like, I'm trying to move myself from, just being doing what I was told to kind of just being a better person and treating everybody as a human being. So it's like, and that's difficult with religious indoctrination because certain people aren't human or they're subhuman. And I've made that argument many times. The whole male-female dynamic in the Bible is definitely women as subhuman, whether they want to acknowledge that or not. And that gets a lot of anger from some people, but it's a great discussion starter. But it's
justifiable anger, though. Like, that's a justifiable thing to be angry. Like, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I am a woman.
Yes, really?
I am. And it doesn't feel good to hear that, right? Like, it doesn't feel good to be in a society where there's like a large swath of people who have that as just an inherent part of their belief system, and having to grapple with that and fight against that, even though it seems like a brick wall. But on the flip side of that, when people are willing to go, oh, okay, maybe this isn't good and I did bad things, and I did bad things because of this, and I want to not do that anymore because it doesn't feel good and I know that it's not right. I want to be able to be like, okay, well, there's two sides of this. One, you need to be accountable because you did fucking do it.
Yes.
And you did fucking do it and you need to be accountable for your actions, but also good, like get out, like
Yes.
pave a road for more people to follow you where you can be accountable. But men have a responsibility in that regard as well, because they need to be a part of paving that road. We can't pave that road without accountability.
Yeah. And so
it's twofold. And I think that that's where the nuance comes in, right? Because women are like, hey, we're being treated like shit. And men are like, well, oh, it's because of religion and it's not my fault because like, well, no, it is.
Well, my point at that point, Shannon, is, well, who's been in charge of the religion though? You know,
well, who was in charge of the relationship?
Yeah, you know, you have men in charge of the relationship. You have men in charge of the religion, creating the idea.
Yeah,
you know, like for thousands of years. It's like we have to take some sort of accountability for what we created here. Like if you create a Frankenstein's monster that hurts people, you're accountable for that. You know, so even if you don't do it, if you created a system that does it, that's a problem. You know, and you have to acknowledge that. And so, you know, women never had much say in Judaism, Islam, or Christianity. So, and it's still the case. So it's like, you know, I can't really blame women for anything involving those things. They're like, they've always been at the shitty end of the stick on this whole thing. So it's like, and who created all that? Well, us guys. So I'm all for accountability there. That's definitely true.
Yeah, and I'm talking about personal accountability, not like ubiquitous, men are accountable just in general for everything that's ever happened in society.
Yeah, I don't want that either. But I think, like, I look at religion and I can at least say, you know, if you have a religion like both, all the sexes are involved kind of thing, then you get a little bit more balance. Like, I don't see that in some religions, like Buddhism seems to be a little bit more balanced, but they still have problems. But Christianity,
women couldn't even have their own bank account or credit card until the 1970s. So
so it's still definitely a very big issue, and we have accountability. But I also know a lot of people that are in therapy because they never wanted that in the first place. So I think it's like
nuance.
Yes, nuance is very helpful here, because it's like, I know I talk to my therapist about that every once in a while. It's like there's a lot of subjects that I talk about. It gets to be a lot.
Well, I'm glad you have her, and I'm sorry I went so deep, but like it's like I was here to talk about death, which is somehow actually probably less controversial than talking about this. But
I get it. I mean, I try to take accountability for the things I did, but at the same time, process the emotions so I don't do them anymore. Like, it's like what caused the person to not follow their true self in a sense, and instead do what the religion taught them. What's that tripping point? Okay, let's find the tripping point so I do the good thing and don't be an asshole. You know, it's kind of like, it's like, how do I not follow the crowd when it's wrong? You know, it's like it's a peer pressure issue too, because you grow up in church and you're surrounded with it on a practical daily basis, and it's like, I don't want that. You know, it's like, so Earl makes a good point. Toxic masculinity hurts men the most. Yes, it
100%.
Because there's a lot of us trying to be better, and
but what does better mean? Depending on the paradigm, right? It depends on the paradigm.
Yeah, it's kind of a value judgment. So it's like, okay, you're still fighting through that.
If you ask Andrew Tate, what does being a better man mean? And ask me, what does being a better man mean? You'll get different answers. So you need to
answers.
Right. So it all comes back to the question of like morality and ethics, ultimately, in my mind, which is why one of my other linchpins of deconversion was morality, because I felt as though the definition of morality that I held personally, that I thought was in line with like biblical tenets, was actually not based on what I was reading. And if you hold to a tenet of morality that is about preventing harm and encouraging flourishing, if those are your two primary goals, preventing harm and encouraging flourishing, and there's always nuance. There is always nuance. You and I both know that. Then you can use those as your tether, as your anchor to deliberate what you're going to do in any given situation. And it doesn't matter what somebody's idea of the best version of a man is, because you should be focused on what the best version of a person is. Because men and women and non-binary people and everyone in between are all people. And the best version of a person is what makes a best society. And there is no best version of a man or best version of a woman. They are not different. There is the best version of a person.
Yeah, so I think that's where I think that's what our society is struggling with, is moving that discussion from the whole male dynamic that's existed for hundreds of years to what's the best relationship between two people. Get rid of all that stuff and talk about being a good person. What does that mean? And it's a very different discussion, because everybody wants to go into their roles and whatever, and this is what's right for this and that. And it's like, I don't think that's a good person. I don't think that's being a good person.
But those are the same people that are like, gender is not a social construct. Oh, it isn't? Is there a social construction of what the best man is, though? Okay, good talk.
Yeah, good talk.
Good talk. Yeah, good talk. Okay, so that's a social construction.
It's like that word. The problem with the word gender is, and this is something I've been working on as a political scientist. That's my other degree. It's like, I almost think we need a different term for it at this point.
Why?
Well, because we have so many definitions. It's like,
there's not really so many definitions. What do you mean?
Well, there's like
of the word gender.
Like the word gender itself will be used in scientific context as biological and purely biological.
That would be sex.
Yeah,
sex is utilized as purely biological, but they may use gender as a synonym inadvertently.
That's kind of my issue, because I would read papers when I was in school, and like, okay, this because I was taking a biology genetics class, and I'm like, okay, they're referring to biological sex as gender all the way through the paper. So it's like,
when was the paper written?
Probably 15 years ago. So
that's odd.
It was kind of odd to me. It stuck out. That's why I'm mentioning it. Like, it's like, I think a lot more modern things, they separate those two, and they do it very well. But
it sounds to me like you're arguing more so for that people need to use sex in its context, like from a biological perspective, more consistently in papers, as opposed to having a different definition of gender.
Because I think it confuses the issue, because then you'll have the biological gender people come, well, it says so in this paper, it's like, I think the definitions have changed there, bro. So it's like, but it gets very interesting, because I'm always curious as how language is used and how it is used to affect people's opinions. So
when maybe this will help. So if you're thinking of a man or a woman, let's just stick to the binary. You're not thinking, what gonads do they have? Do they produce oocytes, or do they produce sperm? You're thinking of a confluence of like societally imposed aspects, like what their potential roles are, what their affect might be, what the stereotypes might be, what their physical presentation might be, or their phenotype. You're thinking of those things. Like when I say imagine a woman, you're not imagining a XY chromosome or an XX chromosome. Sorry, you're imagining XX. Sorry, XX. My God, XX. Sorry, biological essentialist. God help me, biological. You're not imagining an XX chromosome or an oocyte or a uterus or whatever. You're imagining some vision of some like proto woman that exists because they have a presentation, and they likely have that you recognize as like, not necessarily socially accepted, but like adherent to social convention. And you also recognize probably a series of attributes, like whether they're accurate or not, that they may be stereotypical, they may not be stereotypical, that have to do with like roles in society and potential likely interests, or like what their voice sounds like, or what their interests might be. A lot of so that's a social construct, right? That's not a biological construct. All of that exists within the realm of social construction. Now, gender is more complex than that, because whatever you're imagining as a prototype in your mind isn't as defined as any actual real existing woman. Because actually, like, the reason my wrist is broken right now, let me turn my camera on, even though I'm a disaster right now because of my turn it on so that people can see. So I broke my wrist. The reason I broke my wrist is because I'm a competitive athlete.
Okay, gotcha.
I broke my wrist playing soccer because I'm a competitive athlete, and that's why I can't like do anything right now. So that would defy social construction, right? Like if I cut my hair short, that would defy the social construction. Like all of these things potentially would diminish people's perception of my adherence to gender.
Yes.
Because gender in a binary form is a social construction. And like if I was with a woman and had shorter hair and was binding my chest and was wearing clothes that were considered more societally male and was taking hormones to be perceived as more male visually, as a phenotypical male, then I could get to the point that I was perceived like very easily as a male. Like, I mean, maybe not, I don't know. But I'm a woman, so I'm not interested in transition, but that is a possibility. There's people that air quotes pass, and they air quotes pass.
Okay, I got it.
Because it's a fucking social construction.
Yeah, I get
right?
it. I mean, I've had that statement before, because I think we deal with things in different contexts, and every like area of study has to define what they're talking about. I think a lot of people just don't get that. I get, like, a lot of people say, well, the social construct seems to have this idea of you're just making it up. And it's like, I'm not sure it's made up. I don't think it's made up at all anymore. It's like, no, I can see it. How you're perceived and things like that is very much more of a social construct than anything else. It's not necessarily a biological thing at all. So yeah,
no,
but yeah.
Really, like, being a woman has a lot more to do with how you're treated than who you are. And being a man does as well. We've already had a conversation about that. Right?
Correct.
There's a lot of aspects of social construction that have directly impacted you and people like you because of the social construction around the gender of male and what that means, right? Because it doesn't just mean how you present. It means what you're intended to do, depending on the context. It means who you're intended to be, what you're intended to instantiate. All of those things are tied up within it. So it's funny to me and disparate when the very people that are like, gender just means vagina or penis, are the same people that are like, except women, shut the fuck up, and men, you're in charge. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Is it a social construct? Like, is that because I have a vagina? Like, is that biological? Like, biologically, my vagina means I shut the fuck up? Because you're going to need to extrapolate upon that for me.
Yeah, connect the logic for me, put the dots together, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, I think this discussion is going to go on, and as a political scientist, I'm kind of looking at it as this discussion is going to take a while. It's just going to take a while because of everybody's preconceived ideas. So, and it takes a lot of education to educate. Like, I learned a few things from just listening to you, so it's just nice.
Oh, well, that's a mistake. Learning things from listening to me is a huge mistake. That's why
Shannon, you diminish yourself way too much.
That's why part of the tenets of my channel are find out, don't assume. Source methodology. Go to the primary sources, not the propaganda sources, not whatever your Google search first brings up to you. Go to primary sources. Find out, don't assume. I do need to go. This was delightful. I thought we were gonna just have a brief chat and I was gonna go, but I do need to go because I've got to prepare for our children coming and
I do need to go as well. So I get to a point where I don't know how this is triggered yet, where I get my autistic antisocial self starts to kick in.
No.
Yeah, I need to go rest. I need to go relax and recharge.
Totally get it. Yeah, we're done peopling. You and I are both done peopling right now, and we will stop peopling, and we will go disassociate with our phones or whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
It was nice to actually meet you in person, Ed, and I wish you a massive future success, and I hope that we interact again in the future.
Yes, I hope we do too. And thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I appreciate the discussion. So it's always good. And once again, thank you. You were very influential in me getting over the stigma of therapy. So thank you very much for that.
That makes me want to make another video. I'm going to have to find time. I lamented that I haven't in ages, but yeah, no, I will have to find time.
Appreciate you.
Thank
you. Say hi to Paul for me. That I'm way behind his minimal witnesses theory, so I'm behind that. Can get behind that.
We don't encourage Paul until he gets me a coffee table. That's the rules in this house.
There you go. Make sure he does something nice for you before you tell him that.
Yeah, he doesn't have to just a coffee table. That's all I ask. That's the only thing. That's my only need or requirement. All right. Have a good night. It was nice to meet you, Ed.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
You too. All right. Well, that was fun. Had a good time with that one. All right. Thank you, everybody. I do have to kind of run. I'm getting team coffee table. So there's that, but team coffee table. But thank you, everybody. Yes, I did have, I did want to, before I leave, though, I want to make sure that if you came in late, you got to see the first holy jewelry of Fangs. I want to make sure that was properly documented. So there's that. So, but definitely blessed be Fangs and all of that. And may he nibble on with sharp, pointy teeth on your vegetables and keep them free from being corrupted. So there's that. Appreciate all of that. And thank you all for coming by. Thanks for all the donations. I'm wearing the silly hat for a reason. So thank you. But yeah, it was a great conversation tonight with Shannon. I appreciated that. I finally got to cross that one off my bucket list to make sure I thank certain people. My bucket list is weird. I want to thank certain people for being influential in my life, and I got to do that tonight. So thank you very, very much for that, Shannon. I appreciate it. So there's that. Thank you very much. But yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, do all the things that you guys do. I am the benevolent dictator of the channel, except when I'm not, which is most of the time. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure that you spend all your time, money, and energy on yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you all next time.